You're listening to Puma Podcast.
So pagdating sa energy source ng Pilipinas, isa sa primary source natin yung Malampaya gas field sa may Palawan area. Nade-deplete na yung supply na yon. So mayroon talagang risk in the future na mawalan tayo ng kuryente kasi depleted yung supply. So magkakaroon possibly ng mga rotational blackout.
Pagdating sa mga bagay na ayaw nating mangyari kapag summer, brownout na siguro ang number 1. At nangyari nga ito kailan lang. 300,000 Meralco customers in Metro Manila, Cavite, and Rizal were affected by rotating brownouts on May 8. The Department of Energy said this was because of the, quote, tripping of the Bolo Masinloc 230 kilovolt line 2, which led to the tripping of Masinloc units 1 and 2, end quote. Here's Energy Undersecretary Rowena Cristina Guevara talking to reporters a day after.
There was heavy rains and lightning in that area. Tinamaan yung transmission line nila.
And in fact, Energy Secretary Rafael Lotilla mentioned, quote, recent prolonged power outages in Panay and Negros, unquote, as well. The DOE also expects the Luzon grid to be placed under yellow alert 15 times for the rest of the year. But they noted too that a red alert is possible if a repeat of the tripping incident occurs. Basically, these alerts are a sign that our demand is high and our energy reserves are low and may not be able to meet this demand. Low bat, kumbaga. Hi, ako si Trisha Aquino, Puma Podcast. You're listening to Teka Teka News. This is the third episode of a series on energy transition, the communities affected by it, and what it takes for us to be able to have power in our homes. We talked about Batangas City and the fisher folk whose lives have been both disrupted and improved by the energy projects there. We also discussed what these projects mean for the Verde Island Passage, which has also been called the Amazon of the oceans for its rich marine biodiversity. Today, let's zoom out. Hindi lang Pilipinas ang nangangailangan ng kuryente, kundi ang buong mundo. So, what does this mean for us? Here's Cherry Salazar. She's a multimedia reporter for the Philippine Center for Investigative Journalism, or PCIJ. You've heard her in our other episodes, and by now you know that she spent a huge chunk of last year looking into energy transition.
Yun yung tinatry na isolve ngayon ng Department of Energy by looking for other sources. Dahil doon sa ongoing na territorial dispute kasi sa China, yung oil and gas exploration natin, medyo affected din talaga siya. Kaya ang tinitingnan ngayon ng DOE, yung pag-import. Kaya tayo na sa LNG,
Liquefied natural gas, or LNG, is natural gas that is cooled down to about minus 160 degrees Celsius. This cooling transforms the gas to liquid form, making it easier to store and transport. To be utilized, LNG is converted back into its gaseous form through reheating. This process is called regasification. Eto si Elisa Lopez, reporter din ng PCIJ. 6 na buwan siyang nag-research tungkol sa issue at pumunta din siya sa Batangas kung saan maraming energy infra ang tinatayo o nakatayo na. Dahil ang lugar ay daungan ng mga barge or cargo na nagdadala ng ini-import nating natural gas.
May natural gas power plants talaga tayo. Pero yung LNG terminal, isa pa lang yung magiging operational.
This is the one operated by Excellent Energy Resources, Inc. EERI is a subsidiary of San Miguel Global Power Holdings.
So, nandun siya sa regasification. Tapos, gagamitin na siya nung power plant na malapit sa kanya para mapatakbo yung plant na yun. Ang LNG terminal usually meron siyang importation area and dito binababa yung LNG. So, it usually nasa coastal area siya dapat para mas accessible. So, after the importation, may regasification process. And then, pagkatapos nun, saka naman yun itatransport to the power plants na gagamit sa kanya. Yung sinasabi na may chance na may nilalabas yung power plants na tubig, nangyayari yon pag doon na sa part na gagamitin na ng power plant yung natural gas. habang ginagamit na siya ng power plant, saka may nilalabas yung power plant na tubig na sinasabi naman nila na malinis na, pero of course, galing pa rin siya sa isang planta.
And we have talked about the environmental impact of these facilities in the past episodes. Now, natural gas has long been one of our energy sources. At its peak, natural gas from Malampaya supplied 40% of our energy needs. But now, natural gas only supplies about 20% of our energy needs, while coal supplies more than half. Renewable energy supplies the remaining 21%. But with the coal moratorium by 2040, natural gas is expected to take over as our major fuel source for power generation. It's been called the cleanest fossil fuel because it has significantly less carbon emissions than coal and oil. This is why it's seen as a transition fuel to help the Philippines meet its climate promise of a 75% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions by 2030, while renewable energy facilities and mechanisms are being built. But one important thing to note about liquefied natural gas is that it's imported. Eto ulit si Cherry.
Subject siya sa market volatility, sa geopolitics, tulad halimbawa nung Ukraine and Russia na conflict. So maraming European countries ang medyo nag-cut ng ties sa Russian oil industry. So ang nangyari ngayon, kailangan nating mag-compete with them dahil doon sila sa LNG market naman. Dahil globally, we are trying to meet our decarbonization targets. So marami ang tumitingin sa LNG as a cleaner fossil fuel. Kaya talagang malaki yung demand for LNG ngayon.
It's challenging, to say the least, for the Philippines to get its LNG supply in this context.
May dalawang ways to get our LNG supply. Yung isa is long-term contract. So, pipirma ka sa isang LNG supplier for, let's say, 20 years na magsusupply siya ng LNG. Yung iba naman ay spot market. So, medyo parang as needed siya. Na, okay, kailangan ko ng LNG supply, pwede mo ba akong bigyan ng cargo?
So first, long-term contracts. Japan is a leading importer of LNG, and according to its trade ministry, long-term supply contracts with shipments before 2026 are already sold out globally. Quote, "The LNG procurement environment has changed completely. Procurement can also be said to be in a state of war." End quote. At ito pa ang isang problema sa long-term supply contracts.
So, yung long-term contracts kasi, dahil kadalasan fixed yung price, kasi nga, nagpirmahan na kayo basically, di ba? Tapos, ngayon, mataas yung demand for LNG. Mayroong mga suppliers na nagde-default sa existing contracts nila para mag-cater doon sa ibang bibili ng supply nila dahil mas mataas yung pwede nilang ipagbenta sa supply. So, ang nangyayari, yung mga una nang napirmahan na contracts, hindi nila nabibigyan or hindi nila nasa-serve yung contract na yon.
Even if there are penalties in the contract, okay lang yun kung mas malaki naman ang kikitain nila by turning their back on the original agreement. Ano naman ang issue sa spot market?
Sa spot market naman, dahil nga medyo parang as needed yung pagbili ng LNG, subject siya sa kung gaano ka-volatile yung market. So ngayon, mataas yung demand, hindi pa nagka-catch up yung supply, yung price, magko-compete ka rin talaga. So for poorer countries, nahihirapan sila to get their LNG supply kasi there are other countries, other richer countries that are willing to pay more.
And unfortunately, these problems in energy supply are expected to exacerbate the cost of living crisis. That's according to the Global Risks Perception Survey of the World Economic Forum. It was released in January. And the cost of living crisis is seen as the biggest global risk in the next 2 years, despite the climate crisis that we know and feel is happening.
So, ganun ka-multi-sectoral at ganun ka-expansive yung impact ng energy supply crisis. Because when really we think about it, lahat tayo nagre-rely sa kanya. All our industries, yung household natin, reliant yun sa energy.
Based on proposals submitted to the DOE, at least 7 liquefied natural gas terminals are expected to be built along the coasts of Luzon. Most of their proponents are companies that have long been in the power industry. For example, FGen LNG Corp's Floating Storage and Regasification Unit, which is the largest among the proponents, is owned by the Lopez family. The Lopez's First Gen Corp is the biggest natural gas-powered plant operator in the country. It owns and operates 4 of 5 natural gas-fired power plants in Luzon. It has long relied on supply from Malampaya, and the gas field will dry up soon, thus the need for the LNG terminal. The Lopez company had expected to operate the terminal by the first quarter of 2023.
So si San Miguel naman it's more of they're diversifying their company. So now that coal is out, they know that natural gas is the immediate alternative. So it's just a business decision, basically.
But why do we need to know who we are entrusting these projects to?
Siguro isa rin sa na-reveal sa akin is, according to EPIRA actually,
That's the Electric Power Industry Reform Act.
may certain percentages lang dapat na pagmamayari ng isang company para ma-prevent ang monopoly. Pero makikita mo dito na, okay, siguro hindi nga nila monopolize. Pero makikita mo na parang mabibilang mo pa rin kung sino lang yung may pagmamayari ng power company sa atin. And why do we need to know that? I'm not saying na may monopoly ito or something, etc. It's just important to note that kung sino man yung gumagawa din ng LNG or kung sino man yung nag-ooperate na ng mga LNG terminals or nagpo-propose ng LNG terminals, sila na rin yung matagal ng players dito. There could be benefits there kasi it means that they know the industry, for example, alam na nila kung paano to patakbuhin, etc. But they will dictate the prices and they will operate our industries.
Knowing who operates these facilities also enables us to hold these proponents accountable.
And yes, meron din kaming nakita na proposed LNG company na connected to some politicians in Cebu. Well, if you're from Cebu, you would want to know kung ano man yung policy na, for example, propose ng leader mo. Baka bigla na lang may LNG terminal dyan sa bakuran nyo. And hindi mo alam, may interest pala doon si mayor, si vice mayor.
And that was today's episode of Teka Teka News. This is the third of a series on energy transition, the communities affected by it, and what it takes for us to be able to have power in our homes. We'll get into renewable energy and the role you and I might be able to play in energy transition in the next episode. That's the last of the series. Again, I'm Trisha Aquino, Puma Podcast. This episode was produced by myself and co-written with Cherry Salazar and Elisa Lopez of the Philippine Center for Investigative Journalism. Bitin sa kwento? Check out the articles, infographics, and pictures of the communities and the fishermen who live here on their website. That's pcij.org. This episode was edited by Pidoy Blanco. Follow Teka Teka News wherever you listen to podcasts, including YouTube. Thanks for listening.